I'm not an ordinary talk show host. I'm not a guy who was a disc jockey who got lucky. Let's make this a vigorous discussion. I don't care if you're a Democrat or Republican. You've got to do the right thing for humanity. Let's re-educate America. There is no separation of church and state in the Constitution. What is socialized medicine? It's a disaster. Let's show the Hollywood idiots that we have a brain. Red, diaper, doper babies. They're running the universities, they're running the journalism departments, and they're running the courts. How could this be happening to sane, normal, decent, patriotic Americans? I have been talking about borders, language, and culture ever since I began in the media. How can the listeners to the Savage Nation stop them from tearing our culture to pieces? Savage. Be here or be nowhere.
Warning, the Savage Nation contains adult language, adult content, and psychological nudity. Viewer discretion is advised.
You're watching MSNBC. Now, best-selling author and one of America's most popular radio personalities, Michael Savage, on the Savage Nation.
Hello, infidels. Here I am again. Welcome to the Savage Nation. My weekly crusade for truth on television. Did I just say the word crusade? Yes, I did. Crusade, crusade, crusade. And later in the show, you'll see why. As always on this show, you're going to experience extreme psychological nudity. What does that mean? It means I strip away the veneer of deceit to bring you the naked reality of the liberal body politic. It isn't always pretty. Think Ed Asner's behind, but it's the savage truth. Now, here's what got me really crazy this week. You know what it is? Martha and Hillary. Hillary and Martha. Martha and Hillary. Hillary and Martha. Two of the most powerful women in America, and everybody's talking about them. But what's interesting is the way that people are talking about them. For example, why does Hillary deserve praise while Martha seems to deserve blame? I'll tell you about that on the Savage Nation. Of course, I'll bring you up to date on the stories that made the Savage Times. For one, there's the Old York Times, the 10 Commandments, and outrageous abuses of your taxpayer dollars. Another big story hit the wires yesterday. John Dean of Watergate fame is saying that if George Bush lied about weapons of mass destruction, George Bush should be impeached. That's an amazing story. Now, if you saw the show last week, you saw me talk about the Muslim woman in Florida who would not remove her veil for a driver's license photo. Remember that? My point was simple. When you live in this country, you follow the law. When in America, do as Americans do. But when I tried to discuss this with Court TV's Lisa Bloom, she got all politically correct with me, and she started to lecture me about religious tolerance, and that was a mistake. Let me tell you something. Just like in America, when you come on the Savage Nation, you play by my rules. It's my show. Well, the response to that segment, that interview, was overwhelming. I got emails, callers on my radio show, everyone saying, play it, play it, play it again, and I will. But there's actually an update to that interchange in that story, which you won't believe, the woman with the veil, when you hear it. And I think that's a good enough reason to replay part of last week's show, in case you missed it. Also, I'm going to use that segment to teach you a little bit about parthenogenesis. Parthenogenesis. Do we have it up yet? No, not yet. We'll have it later. So you have to keep watching to find out what that means, okay? And this week, the Department of Justice released a report. By the way, this is because the Belmont Stakes are going today. We got a horsewhip. Very critical of the treatment of illegal immigrants detained in connection with terrorism investigations. Can you believe this? I want to know why we should care about the rights of illegal aliens who are prisoners. What about the rights of we Americans to survival? What about the rights of all the oppressed people living under tyrants like Saddam Hussein? I didn't see the ACLU say one word about the 24 million people who have been living in that hellhole. Shame on the pockmarked head of the ACLU. Next, I'm going to talk about sex and pornography. I knew that saying those words would get your attention, so I'll say them again. Sex and pornography. And now that I've got your attention, I want to make a serious point about why magazines such as Playboy and the other soft-core stuff are very bad for us as a society. It's probably not why you think, okay? And then the president calls the Middle East a roadmap to peace, but it could just as easily be a roadmap to the destruction of the Jewish state and to holy war. There are a lot of questions that need to be asked about the Middle East and the United States, and I am going to ask them, like, does jihad really mean crusade? I also want to hear what you have to say about it. I will be taking your calls at 1-888-MSNBC-USA. I can see that you're lining up already. And on a lighter note, what would the Savage Nation be without this week's Hollywood idiot? You want to stick around to see who it is. Finally, this week, I want to thank all of my loyal viewers. Gee, I should have put this at the top. I forgot it. Because the Savage Nation actually beat CNN in the ratings last week because of you. You beat CNN. And it's only to get bigger and bigger and better on the show. So tell your friends to get in on the ground floor, because the next stop, well, I wouldn't say is prime time. I don't know what the next stop is. Okay? Later on the show, I'll be reading some of your emails and responding to your questions and comments. And again, I'll take your calls at 1-888-MSNBC-USA. Remember, if you get on the air with me, Michael Savage, you'll talk to more people than you'll meet for the rest of your life. Think about the power. You're watching the Savage Nation. Be here or be nowhere. That's it.
Next, Martha and Hillary. Michael Savage tells you why the public is persecuting the wrong woman.
Had an adulterous liaison in the White House and lied to cover it up. Should the American people ask for his resignation?
Well, they should certainly be concerned about it.
Should they ask for his resignation?
Well, I think that if all that were proven true, I think that would be a very serious offense. That is not going to be proven true.
Yeah, welcome back to the Savage Nation. Look, this week, you and everyone else have been talking about two of the most powerful women in America, Martha Stewart and Hillary Clinton. What's interesting to me, anyway, is the way they're being talked about. They're like two sides of a coin, okay? On one side, there's Hillary. She's the wife of a man who gave us trickle-down immorality. And she is a senator, okay, from another state in New York. And she's an author with ghostwriters of a soap opera confessional book that only fans of Evita Peron would find interesting. But it's all designed to enhance her marketability as a presidential candidate. And that's my point. It seems to me that every move Hillary makes is calculated to benefit one person, herself. And I still can't believe that when poor Hillary bears her soul about the abuse she's endured, that women actually sympathize with her, as do feminist males. After her husband confessed to his affair with Monica, it's written that she felt nothing but profound sadness, disappointment, and unresolved anger. And I could barely speak to Bill, and when I did, it was a tirade. Really, just the kind of woman we want in the White House in 2008, huh? Because that's what this book is really all about. It's a PR campaign. On the other side of the coin, there's Martha Stewart. Now, Martha Stewart, I have sympathy for. She's a self-made, driven career woman who built an empire with her own two hands. She was not handed anything. She's an author of a real book, a real series of books, wonderful cookbooks and lifestyle books that have had a genuine impact on American culture. Think of how many string beans that woman had to cut to get where she was, right? Her books and products are designed, by the way. She gave something to the world. She gave something to the world. She gave beauty and she gave ideas. But when Martha Stewart or her broker makes an error in judgment, everyone calls for her head on a platter. And look what they're charging her with. Obstructing justice, conspiracy to obstruct justice, making false statements, perjury, securities fraud. Somebody's out to get her. The bottom line is this, in my opinion, Hillary is universally praised, while Martha is universally demonized. I would like to know why. Is it because Hillary is an insider favored by holdovers from her husband's administration, including the prosecutor in the U.S. Attorney's Office, in the District Attorney's Office? Let me start again. The person going after Martha Stewart in Manhattan was appointed by Bill Clinton. Okay, does that say anything to you? And Martha is seen as an outsider with no connections. And people seem to jealously despise her for her success. Now, here's what I have to say. If Martha had paid some politicians on her way up, right now, she wouldn't be on her way down. Let me repeat that. If Martha Stewart had made campaign donations on her way up, she wouldn't be on her way down. Okay? Is that clear? But politics and payola aside, let's compare the two women on a level playing field. Martha is the author of multiple lifestyle and cookbooks that benefit millions of people. She has provided a nice product. Hillary is the quote-unquote author, along with many ghostwriters, of a memoir that benefits who but herself and her own team. Martha, the creator of a multi-million-dollar media corporation. Hillary was the wannabe creator of socialized medicine. Remember that fiasco? It wouldn't have given us very much other than socialized medicine and a socialized America. Martha is the builder of an international empire. Hillary is the trasher of the Empire State, New York, where she's not even from. I'd say Martha's the head-to-head winner here. That's my opinion. But I'd like to know what you think about this. Let's take some callers on the Savage Nation. Let's go immediately to line 2. David, thanks for calling. What's on your mind?
Yeah, it's my understanding that Hillary is getting actually less popular in New York City. Every time she wants to, some political power or promotion, she uses tactics like Larry King Live and Simon & Schuster, Michael.
Yeah. Well,
will you be reading her book?
Me? Would I read her book? I still haven't gotten through the decline and fall of Western civilization. I don't think I'm going to catch up to Hillary's, works. Why would I read that book? I don't want to read that tripe. But the question is this. Why do you think she's so popular? Answer. Because beware the government media complex, says Michael Savage. I wrote that article. Check it out on my website. I wrote it 5 years ago. And I mean the liberal government, liberal media complex. Every time any one of them get in trouble, it's Larry King with another pair of suspenders. So how are you today? What do you got to... I mean, he's like a front man for them. I have nothing against Larry, but it's embarrassing at this point. That's number one. Number 2, I want to go on to another caller, so we will. Thanks for that call. Okay, what do we want to talk about? Bush, the veil. You want to move to Bush? Go ahead. Rick, line 4, go ahead. You're on the Savage Nation. Topic, please.
Yeah, I want to just a quick comment on this, on the weapons of mass destruction.
Go ahead.
Everybody's so quick to accuse Bush and the administration of lying because we haven't yet found weapons of mass destruction. Well, we haven't found Saddam Hussein either. Does that mean we lied about his existence?
I have a totally different take on the whole picture. I don't think governments tell the truth to begin with. I'm rather cynical. The question is, how big a lie is it, and who got hurt by it? The answer is no one got hurt by it, even if it was a naked, bald-faced lie to bring the American people behind the war. And I'm not saying it is, but let's say it is. Let's say you can prove that. Well, who benefited from the war? Well, let's start with 24 million Iraqi people who were liberated from torture chambers. That's one big victory for humanity, wouldn't you say?
Well, yeah, but
now let's go to the next step. Oil. Gas prices are down. If it was about oil, thank God, we're all benefiting from oil. So that monster isn't holding on to the oil, and oil is now freely available at a lower price on the world market. So therefore, there are many benefits to it, even if the government did cynically drag us into the war against our stupid will.
Major negative to it if it was a lie, and that is what happens in the future when we try to do more things and we rely on our intelligence.
What do the American people know anyway? Most of them are interested in either sports or pornography. So what's the difference to them what the reasons were for going to war? They're glad it's over. They're glad Saddam is done. They're glad that the oil wells aren't on fire. They're glad that the number of Americans killed was low. They're glad the number of Iraqi civilians killed was low. They're glad to see that we still have a military with guts and brains. And they're glad that we finally struck back at one of the Arabic tyrants. In plain English, we sent a shot across the bow of militant Islam. And let me tell you something else. The next oil spigot dictator is going to think twice about sending planes into an American building because they know that this administration is not Al Gore and Bill Clinton. They're going to get hurt if they tamper with George Bush. So I say at the end of it all, it's a good deal. If they lied or they didn't lie, it doesn't matter to me. The end result is what matters. And that's all I want to say on it. You know, now people, oh, you don't care about the truth, Savage. How dare you say that it's okay to lie? I didn't say any of that. I don't know one government on earth that's known to tell the truth. So the question is, how big is the lie? And did we get hurt or did we benefit? That's what you got to evaluate. Not whether someone is 100% truthful. That's the way I see it. Now, if it was a matter of lying and damaging national security, that would be quite another. But in this case, we certainly increased and improved our national security, okay? That's all I want to say. We got another caller? I'll take another caller. Kathy, line 2. You're on the Savage Nation topic, please. What's on your mind?
I have a comment about Hillary. I've been married to a high-powered attorney in Santa Fe, New Mexico for over 40 years. He has cheated on me right and left. I know it. It keeps him from touching me when he's with another woman. I stay with him because I get power from him, I get money from him, and any woman who says other is lying.
So wait a minute. So in other words, you have an arrangement in essence.
You know, it's an unspoken arrangement.
So what's wrong with that? If you don't mind, why should it be a big deal to anyone else?
And it isn't. I don't mind, but other people make it a big deal. They make it their business.
Excuse me, I sneezed on the truth. Pardon me. Well, it's your business, first of all, but my friend, when it comes to the President of the United States, he looked at this country, to the eyes of this country, and said, point blank, I did not have sex with that woman, meaning Monica Lewinsky. I don't think he was talking about Hillary, was he? Now, wait a minute. He could say that he meant his wife, come to think of it.
Yeah,
he could have said, I did not have sex with that woman. Maybe he was talking about Hillary. Wait a minute. We could have misinterpreted the whole thing. The guy could have been telling the truth. This is a conservative conspiracy to debase Bill Clinton. Okay, we're almost through with this segment. We'll be back in the Savage Nation with a lot more fun and a lot more facts and a lot more reality, okay? I don't know what we're going to talk about. I'll have to think about it after I have another cup of coffee here. It's early in the day for me. It's about 2 in the morning here. All right. We're back. It's time to open up the Savage Times, where the slogan is, all the truth that's not in print. It's only fitting that we start with the crisis at the Old York Times, where this week, executive editor Howell Raines and managing editor Gerald Boyd resigned in the wake of the Blair witch hunt. There's been a lot said about this story already, and I don't want to say much more. I just hope that everyone has learned the lesson once and for all, that affirmative action does not work, and it's no wonder that people don't trust the liberal media with weaklings like Pinchy Sulzberger running the show. Now, he's the publisher who inherited the newspaper. I don't know the gentleman, but I say he should have resigned. It wasn't the editor's fault. It was the political correctness climate that was at fault, and that was established by the publisher, Pinchy Sulzberger, the man with the toy moose. Also, the 10 Commandments are back in the news. Remember them? Vaguely remember them? In Alabama, the Supreme Court Chief Justice has refused to remove a monument from the Supreme Court building. He stood up to the punks from NYU. He says the commandments aren't about religion, they're about law. Bravo for the men with guts in this country for standing up for all of the sneaks who hate this country, hate religion, hate the 10 Commandments, and try to break the crosses off war memorials. The judge is right, because in another case in Georgia, an appeals court is telling us something else. They ruled that an image of the commandments can remain on a county court's official seal. That's victory number 2 for America. I hope the 11th Circuit has the good sense to rule that way in Alabama as well. Now, guess where these attacks on the commandments started? I'll give you a hint. 4 initials. Can you figure out what the initials are? ACLU, the American Creeps Libertine Union. What do they hope to accomplish other than destroying religion and replacing it with the all-powerful state? Just as their spiritual godfather, Karl Marx, said, to them, I'm sure, religion is the opiate of the masses. But let me tell you something about religion. At least it doesn't kill like communism does, at least not Christianity today. But Georgia isn't right about everything. A school district there has hired translators for students who speak Spanish, Korean, and Vietnamese. Can you believe this? The school board says it helps to meet the needs of a diverse community. Really? Remember the big 3 words in the Savage Nation? Borders, language, and culture. Borders, language, and culture. That's what the Savage Nation was founded upon. This is an example of how liberals are abusing our tax dollars. Not my book. No. By hiring translators instead of making these brats learn English in defense of multiculturalism. Just remember this, you liberal idiots. English is the glue and the language of the United States. We don't want a Tower of Babel. And when you go to school in the United States, shouldn't it be your goal to learn English if you want to get ahead in this country? That's the way my ancestors did it. I've got a suggestion. How about spending the same money you're wasting on foreign language translators to hire more English teachers? Give them English immersion. It'll be better for them and better for America, you fools. And the state of Massachusetts is also throwing away taxpayer dollars. Why? They're running state-funded seminars for its public defenders. Well, why would that be a waste? You're not going to believe this, because these seminars are designed to help sex offenders beat the rap at all costs. Here's a sample of some of the seminar titles. Wrapping your client in the flag, the Constitution, the Bible, truth, justice, and the American way is one way to get the molester off. That would be funny if it wasn't sick. How about this? Objections. Make the judge and the jury hate the prosecutor rather than you. Or this is what they teach. Forcing the Commonwealth to draw bullseyes on the butts of the prosecutor for later use at the trial. I'm not making these up. How about humanizing the scary man next to you? In other words, if you're not following me, Massachusetts is teaching people how to get molesters off the rap. Can you believe this? We already pay these lawyers. Do we have to train them in sleazy courtroom theatrics and how to trick juries? That's what you get from an illiberal state like Massachusetts. And by the way, in the news of the week, Jerry Lewis, who I happen to really admire, says he resents people who knock world leaders. Can you believe this? He thinks people shouldn't make fun of the Queen of England, and he thinks the ditzy chicks were out of line for criticizing President Bush. Jerry says the First Amendment says you can say anything you want in this country, but it should have an appendage. Try to do it with class. Not bad, Jerry. I always loved your comedy, and you're still a classy guy. Finally, the Cincinnati Contemporary Arts Center celebrated the opening of its new building with a performance by a Chinese artist dressed in a police uniform, complete with a Doberman on a leash, walking on the American flag. This thing is taxpayers funded. They contributed $10 million to build a new center. It is disgusting. As you can see, there's a lot of tax dollars going down the drain that could have been used for important things like education. Now, there's one story I better not miss because it's just up on the web. John Dean. Remember John Dean of Watergate fame? John Dean is asking, should President Bush be impeached if he lied about weapons of mass destruction? He says that's an impeachable offense. He's not saying he did lie, mind you. He's saying if he did lie, he should be impeached. What do you think about that? 1-888 MSNBC USA. This is the Savage Nation. I hope to God I have time for about a 10-second call. Stan, line 6, you're on the Savage Nation. What's on your mind?
Yes, Mike, thanks for taking my call.
Go ahead, fire away.
All right, well, since it was all right for Bush to do his thing in Iraq, do you think that we should go after all countries where the leaders kill their people, or just the ones that have oil and or weapons of mass destruction?
Well, I think we should start with natural resources that we need. I would say that if you want to be very pragmatic about it, China doesn't have any oil that we need, but China's a little too big for us to bite off. Iraq was nice, just about the right size, you know. This dragon was too big, this dragon was too small, and Iraq was just right.
After a break, remember this veiled woman? Michael Savage reveals what he's learned about her since last week's show.
The world needs to stop trying to unveil me. This is a part of my religion.
Yeah, we're back, and it's time for the Savage Nation's big follow-up. What did you think it meant, follow-up? It means, look, last week I told you the ridiculous story of a Florida woman who would not remove her veil for a driver's license photo. She claimed her belief in Islam forbids being photographed without the veil. I also told you that the same woman had used the same phony religious defense, in my opinion, when Child Protection Services officials tried to examine her adopted or foster kids for bruises a few years earlier. She said to them, oh, you can't look at the children. It would violate our religious beliefs. See, apparently, her brand of Islam, by the way, also forbids the kids to disrobe, particularly when they may be bruised. First of all, I'm glad to report on the Savage Nation that just yesterday, a female American judge agreed with me and 99.9% of America and ruled that this woman must remove her veil if she wants to drive. Now, here's the best part of the story. A viewer wrote in to tell me that the same sect of Islam that this woman invoked in these cases, the sect that forbids her to remove her veil and disrobe her children, also forbids women to drive. So she's devout enough to not let her kids disrobe in front of strangers and devout enough to not remove her veil in violation of the law, but apparently she's not devout enough to observe the no driving rule, okay? Seems like a pretty convenient set of religious beliefs to me. But let me be clear about this. I don't care what religion you believe in. That's your right. But when you live in America, you observe American laws. And in this case, national and local security takes precedence over personal faith. I don't want Osama bin Laden driving around in a burqa and a veil with a suicide bomb strapped to his chest. Do you liberal idiots want that? Wake up, you lemming morons, because you'll kill all of us unless we expose you. Now, that's the point I was trying to make when I had Lisa Bloom from Court TV as my guest last week. I thought she had agreed with me. After all, she's a lawyer. But she chose to get politically correct with me and that was the wrong thing to do. Let's take a look at the tape right now on the Savage Nation. Here we go. Now, Lisa, isn't this driver's license case a matter of national security, and isn't that more important than one woman's religious beliefs?
You know, Michael, I'm surprised at you. As a conservative, I think you'd be in favor of freedom of religion, even minority religions, religions that you might not be a part of, and at least accepting the fact that at the beginning of the case, we're going to take other religions seriously and look at what the issues are. In this case, Sultana Freeman is a devout Muslim.
Together.
She's an adult. She chooses Islam. She wants to wear the veil. It doesn't mean she wins the case, but at least we have to look at her religion seriously and not, you know, poo-poo it.
Why not? She's not using this religion for religious sake. She's using it to upset the apple cart of America. She has no right taking a driver's license photo in a mask any more than a member of the Ku Klux Klan does, coming out in a white cap and a white veil and saying, that's my interpretation of Christianity. Do we want to suddenly have masked bandits wearing with driver's license photos? That wouldn't work. What
about a religious Jew who wants to wear a yarmulke or has long facial hair?
Listen to this idiocy.
What about a priest who wants to wear a certain type of gown? Religious people wear different types of clothing than you and I might wear, Michael.
You're way off the map here. A yarmulke doesn't cover a face. We don't use hair for an identity. We use eyes, nose, facial features. If you're going to cover those features except for the eyes, how are you going to identify a driver on the road?
Look, Michael, I'm not saying I disagree with you when we get to the end of the case, because I think that the state of Florida did prove at trial that she does need to remove the veil.
So why are we arguing?
But I would not look down on someone because they're a different religion, because they dress differently than me.
Oh, but that's not the issue. You know it's not their religion, Lisa. You don't have to. Lisa, please don't lecture me about cultural sensitivity, because that's not the issue. The issue is someone trying to get over on us using their religion just to have some fun. That's why the ACLU took the case.
That's what she's doing? How do you know how seriously she takes her religion?
The issue is, Lisa, a mask over a face. You can't agree with that, can you?
It's not about whether I agree or disagree. I'm not a Muslim. If I were a Muslim, I might worship the way she does.
Let me ask you, Lisa, do you have a law degree?
Of course.
So you're arguing that it's okay to wear a mask on a driver's license photo?
No, I'm saying that ultimately I think the state of Florida is going to win this case, and I think they probably should win the case.
All right, well, thanks for being with me. I appreciate it.
All right, thanks, Lisa. Goodbye. Because we respect her rights.
Bye, Lisa. Thanks for being with me. Yeah. Now, ladies and gentlemen, this is amazing. If you listen to that interview, this is an example, in my opinion, of why we're in such trouble in this country. Here is a woman who comes on my show and agrees with me on the law, but tries to make a point that had nothing to do with the issue and tries to lecture me about political correctness. Now, the next part of this story is even more interesting. You may not know that Lisa Bloom, the guest, is the daughter of another eminent lawyer, well, shall I say another lawyer anyway, Gloria Allred. Oh. You've seen her recently representing the girl, the other woman in the Laci Peterson murder. The other woman in the Laci Peterson murder case. Now, take a look at the mother and daughter side by side. Look at the eyes. Do you see a resemblance? One of my viewers did, and he wrote in to tell me about parthenogenesis. Now, that's a term out of biology that means a form of reproduction in which the ovum develops into a new individual without fertilization by a male lawyer. Unusual patterns of heredity can occur in parthenogenetic organisms. For example, offspring produced by some types are identical in all inherited respects to the mother. Had I only known about parthenogenesis before last Saturday. Okay? Look, maybe from now on, liberal Lisa and her mom should appear on television showing their cultural sensitivity, which may look like this. Do we have that graphic ready? Because I think it would be... see, I'm sorry, come on, this is good stuff. John Sullivan, which is, well, that's mom, and that's the daughter. I think it's quite becoming. And as a matter of fact, I think I'm going to open up a chain of stores called Burger King. I think I'm going to start it'll be a big business, Kevin. You want to go in business with me? Savage's Burger King. I think it's going to become a big popular item here in America. All right, time for some callers on the Savage Nation. Nick in Seattle, welcome to the Savage Nation. What's your topic?
Yeah, Michael, about the woman with the veil, just real quick. When I was 16 years old in high school, you know, my fashion statement, I used to wear a baseball cap.
Right.
And when I went to get my driver's license photo, they said, you got to take it off.
Oh.
And
well, you should have said your religion is one of baseballism.
Or something like that.
That I'm a practitioner of a religion called baseballism, where I've got to wear my cap.
I worship the Mariners, exactly. you can't even, I mean, and you can't wear sunglasses either.
No.
So,
no, but all you got to do is declare yourself religiously obliged to wear sunglasses and a veil, and they'll get on their hands and knees and pray to you. After all, my friends, that's what America's all about, isn't it? No, it's not what America's all about. America's all about the land of the free and the home of the brave, not the land of the freak and the home of the, well, unbrave. Let's put it to you that way. In the next segment, we come back on the Savage Nation for more of your calls at 1-888-MSNBC-USA. We also have the Hollywood Idiot. We also have pinups from Playboy going back. Yeah, all right, here I got to do the sex thing again. Marilyn Monroe, Jane Mansfield. We're going to talk about all of that and how women's bodies have changed in terms of what's beautiful, okay? If that doesn't hook you, go watch the Belmont Stakes. I'll be right back on the Savage Nation. Be here or be nowhere, okay? That's it.
Coming up next, why men's magazines are bad for you, and it's not what you think. The top reasons...
Hey, welcome back. I was recently quoted in Playboy magazine because apparently they liked when I said that the problem here in the world is that we in America have too little religion, and they over there have too much religion. We have too much sex, and they have too little sex. And I jokingly suggested that maybe we ought to drop millions of bottles of airline booze, plastic, of course, and millions of copies of Playboy over the Middle East. And I figured that would end terrorism. You know, a guy down there, instead of strapping on a suicide bombing vest, looking at Playboy in a bottle, forget about it. He may have a reason to live in this world instead of waiting for the next world. Now, I'm glad when people give me credit for my ideas, but I do have a problem with these magazines that show airbrushed photos of women. Believe it or not, what I'm about to tell you is one place where Michael Savage agrees with the feminists. I am opposed to this unrealistic, idealized version of the female form. I think it brainwashes men into believing that any woman who doesn't meet up to these airbrushed photos just doesn't make the mark, she's not good enough. And on the other side, I also think it makes women feel inadequate and unable to compete with the images they see. Now, let's take a look at the changing female body image through the years. I'm telling you, this is very good stuff. First, take a look at this classic painting by the artist Rubens. Can we see that? Rubens. I've been thinking, back in the... she needs Jenny Craig. Back in the 1600s, they celebrated real women, okay? I would say that was a little too real, wouldn't you, Kevin? Now let's continue on through history. We have, I would say, let's settle on the 20th century. We have full screens of Betty Grable, the original 1940s pinup girl. Remember her? All right, fine. In World War II, guys, before they went to their deaths, dreamed of her. Then come the 50s. Marilyn Monroe, same thing. Now, you don't see it here, but she had a lot of meat on the bone. She wasn't skinny. Then remember Jane Mansfield. Jane had lots of curves too, right? It was all about the Dagmar breasts and all of that. Then there was the Vargas girl. For a lot of guys, this was, Kevin, for a lot of guys, this was the first taste, and here's where it changes, of the forbidden fruit. But hold on now, stay on this image for a minute. I want to walk back here for a minute. I got something to teach. Professor Savage has something to teach. These may look fine, but they're not real. Women don't look like that. These drawings also turned women into unreal fantasy objects. I know what's going to come with the ratings on the minute we see them. This segment will be through the... Raquel Welch, the voluptuous icon of the 60s. Remember her? Then it all changes. Twiggy, the other side of the 60s. Suddenly women looked like boys. Remember that? Suddenly it was a guy. Somebody decided that looking like a boy who was on heroin was the way women should look. Then there's Kate Moss. Why is looking like a junkie fashionable? I don't know. And what about Gwyneth Paltrow, the icon of today, who looks like she could use a hamburger and fries? Is that Gwyneth Paltrow? Was that Pamela Anderson, the real bionic woman? I don't know all of these girls, to be honest with you. No? Is that Pamela? Oh, there's Pamela Anderson. Okay. Okay. To her credit, she had the implants removed. But the damage was already done, okay? I'm not only opposed to objectifying women. I think the same standards should apply to men, by the way. Let's look at a pinup man. Here's a pinup man. Great body, right? But what do you think it does to the average guy when he goes in the bedroom with his wife? He's probably embarrassed to take his shirt off because he doesn't look like that. My question is, who are the people responsible for planting these images of perfection in our brains and our culture, and in the process, making us think that anything less than perfect is somehow flawed or wrong, okay? Let's take your calls on the Savage Nation. We can even run the pinups again. Okay, what are we going to talk about? Oh, Dan, line 2, you're on the Savage Nation. What's your topic, please?
Hi, Dan. Hi, Savage.
Hi.
I believe that it's wrong to assume that we're objectifying these twiggy women. I think society has changed. We've become a society where health is now idealized, and those women in the old days that you showed in the pinups, they simply weren't attractive. They were overweight, out of health. And
wait, I disagree with you. Now, this is an interesting thing, Dan. Have you traveled much outside of America in your life?
I have. I was in the Navy.
All right, fine. That's fair enough. I remember spending lots of time in the South Pacific, and I spent time in Tonga. Those women are very large. They're very big women. And the mark of beauty in those islands is not a skinny, twiggy woman, but a large woman. And you know why? Because it has survivability adapted to it. In other words, these people were great seafaring people, and big, strong people survived longer and healthier than did skinny people. So it's very cultural. You know, maybe nightclubs with ecstasy and skinny women go together, but it's not true around the world. I think to this day, let's look at Mexico together, Dan. I think that Mexican men to this day still like women who are much heavier than American women. Wouldn't you agree on that?
I do.
Okay, so it's a cultural thing. I don't think that's to do with health, but thank you for, at least you're thinking. That's the main thing. Catherine in Tampa, you're on the Savage Nation. What's on your mind? Catherine, you on there?
Yes.
You're good. What's on your mind?
Dr.
Go ahead.
Savage, get
Yes.
your pointer out. Sophic Savage, I do not agree with you.
Well, go ahead. Tell us why you don't agree.
Hey, you know, you're enhancing yourself. You're standing there with a jacket on. Let's see you without the jacket on.
You want to see me with my jacket off?
Take your jacket off.
What, right now?
Well, hey, you know, everyone enhances themselves.
All right, you asked for it here.
You asked for it, you got it.
No,
Toyota.
so what is your point? I don't get it.
Well, you say that we should not enhance anything. Everyone who walks out the door in the morning enhances themselves.
Wait. There's one thing to enhance a real human being. There's another thing to airbrush a human being. You're not being airbrushed when you go out in the street, are you?
Oh, yes, and you probably got airbrushed before you went on tonight.
Where do you see the airbrushing?
Did you have makeup done?
Very little. I only use powder, if you want to know the truth.
Just a little powder?
Only my hairdresser knows for sure. Okay, you make your point, but I don't agree with it. I'm talking about the extremes is what I'm talking about. But thanks for thinking. Tom in Charleston, West Virginia. Is that on line 6? Tom, you're on the Savage Nation. What's your point?
I just wanted to comment on the impeachability of President Bush. I think that if we could impeach Nixon or possibly even try to impeach the former president, Mr. Clinton, I think beyond a shadow of a doubt, if President Bush committed a bald-faced lie, if he knew the truth that there were no weapons of mass destruction in Iraq and sent the troops over there, put those guys...
You're saying he should be impeached if he bald-faced lied. John Dean says missing weapons of mass destruction is lying about the reason for war, an impeachable offense. John Dean says it is a big one, and a big one. He's not saying the president lied. He's saying if he did, it's impeachable. Let's pray to God the evidence comes through. Thanks for your calls. We're coming right back on the Savage Nation. I will be here with my washboard stomach and gigantic pecs. I'm going to get ready. I'm going to get greased up. Right back on the Savage Nation. Don't go away, because if you do, well, either be here or be nowhere.
Coming up next on the Savage Nation, there's a new holy war going on, and its name is Jihad.
Ultimate
This crusade, this war on terrorism, is going to take a while.
Welcome back to the Savage Nation. Remember, September 01, after the terror attacks, remember that, President Bush referred to a crusade against terrorism, and he was immediately attacked for his use of the word. Mostly it was socialist European leaders who said they were afraid that the war on terror might lead to a replay of the original crusades way back in the Middle Ages. In other words, holy war between Christians and Muslims. French Foreign Minister Hubert Védrine responded to the president's comment by saying, quote, "We have to avoid a clash of civilizations at all costs." Yes, he was French. We should have taken it as a sign of things to come. Let's have a little history lesson here about crusades. According to the Catholic Encyclopedia, and pay attention to this, the Crusades were expeditions undertaken in fulfillment of a solemn vow to deliver the holy places from Mohammedan tyranny. What you don't know, and I want to pause right here, you got to understand this. We keep hearing the Christian Crusades were crusades. They were. But what you don't know is that Islam and Muslims had invaded Europe prior to the Crusades. It was Spanish knights and other knights from Europe who put on the armor and went on their horses and drove the Muslims out of Europe. Now, that's very important. I want you to think about that. Since the Middle Ages, the meaning of the word crusade has been extended to include all wars undertaken in pursuance of a vow and directed against infidels. Let's pause again. Don't all the radical Muslim groups call everyone who doesn't follow their twisted logic infidels? Think about that too. Now let's take a look at some of the major religion-based conflicts on earth today. This is an amazing graph that I've never seen before. These are the conflicts happening on planet Earth. Look carefully. They're in Afghanistan, Bosnia, Chechnya, Cyprus, East Timor, Indonesia, Kashmir, Kosovo, Kurdistan, Macedonia, of course the Middle East, Nigeria, the Philippines, the Sudan, and Uganda. That's 15 conflicts with one thing in common. It's unfortunate, but they all involve Muslims who can't get along with their neighbors. So from the top, isn't a crusade exactly what's going on here already? Not by the Americans, but starting from the Muslim side. They attacked us on 9/11. They aren't fighting us with big armies, of course, and they're not fighting across huge territories as in a typical war. But aren't all the multiple suicide bombers, guerrilla attacks, and even the 9/11 attacks themselves just modern-day examples of an Islamic crusade against Western civilization and what it represents? Doesn't jihad really mean crusade, even from the Middle Ages? Hasn't it always been about Islam trying to take over the world? Here are my questions. Would a Palestinian state really put an end to world terrorism? Will Hamas and other terrorists stop their crusade even if Palestinians do get a homeland? What has Jordan's role been? And why are they a key player in the future? Why hasn't the U.S. moved against Yasser Arafat the way they took out Saddam Hussein? Questions include, should America try to broker peace in the Middle East, or is it time to get out? Russia got out of Cuba. Should the U.S. get out of the Middle East? What does the roadmap ultimately mean for the future of the Jewish state, and is it really our business? I want to hear from you. Let's take some calls on this and all of the preceding topics that I've raised on this great show today at 1-888-MSNBC-USA. Danny, New York City, thank you for calling. What's your topic, please?
Hello.
Hi, Danny.
Okay, well, I was on the phone waiting to talk about the skinny people.
Okay, talk about that first, then whatever came
Okay,
up.
great. You have great topics, so I want to talk about everything. But I want to talk about skinny women. It's just, I myself am on my way to the gym to work out, to look really strong. And I've dated about 5 women, and they're all worried about, am I fat in this, am I fat in that, am I fat in this? And the fact that that man came on and said large women were unhealthy, I mean, he doesn't even take into consideration that women are making themselves anorexic in order to look like these models who are wearing clothes that nobody else in the right mind would ever look good in because nobody looks like that.
Well, okay, it's a cultural thing, it's a generational thing. We got to understand the fashion leaders, whoever they may be, the ones who determine what we should look like, have determined the unisex look is in. Boys should look like girls and girls should look like boys. That's what's going on here. And that's not true throughout history. That was my main point, Danny.
Yes, I understand.
So go to the gym, work out, and then have a hot dog.
All right, I just want to say that...
And then take 2 aspirins and call me in the morning. What else?
That with Palestine, I think if we created a peace agreement in Palestine, that terrorists would probably, they would lose one of their huge reasons for committing terrorist actions. So it would be really interesting to hear what they say.
But they have nothing. Wait a minute. See, this is where I disagree with you. I just showed that map of all the conflicts on Earth. You're going to tell me that the Muslims fighting the Catholics in the Philippines and the Muslims killing Christians in Indonesia are doing it because of the Middle East? No, it's not going to work. And it's time once again for the overwhelmingly most popular segment of the show, known as Savage's Hollywood Idiot. Who is it going to be this week? This loony lefty from Brooklyn, New York, is, oh, I gave it away, is fond of quoting John F. Kennedy's Ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country. That sounds good. It's a good statement. But her truth is more like, do as I say, not as I do. The Hollywood idiot claims to be an environmentalist and a conversationalist, I think, which is true if it means that she lives in a heavily guarded environment where she's conserving several prime acres of Malibu coastline for her own personal enjoyment. Meanwhile, on her website, she posts inspirational messages to her fans, urging them to wash their clothes in cold water, I swear to God, and line dry them. We don't know if she does this on her Malibu estate. Her spokesman was asked and replied, "You can't seriously expect me to answer that." Yes, I think we can. If you set yourself up as a conservationist, you have to lead by example. Unless, of course, you're just a Hollywood hypocrite, which I think this week's winner is. And the winner of this week's Hollywood Idiot is Barbara Streisand. Barbara, you're nobody's environmentalist, baby. Where's your electric car? Where's your electric airplane? Where's your windmill generator? What does it cost you to air condition your 8 bedrooms and 11 bathrooms, which you keep frigid, we understand? The song Evergreen must really be about your bank account. Okay? All right, ladies and gentlemen, that's it for this week's Savage Nation. It went by in a blur. Tune in next week at exactly 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Pacific, right here on MSNBC. But remember this, with God's will and your viewership, I shall return.